Hey everyone, and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. Does YouTube really need another final boss of Battle for Azeroth video? What am I doing with my life? Is a fish lady really worth all of this hassle? Well, actually, yes, because somehow I've went all these months without doing a video on this topic, and we have just got some new information that points to this expansion getting very interesting indeed, especially in regards to how it may set up future expansions. The name, Battle for Azeroth, is super important, especially when we consider our actions after the expansion launches. The battle kicks off with Lordaeron and Teldrassil. The opening moves, therefore, divide the continents between the factions, but instead of going directly at each other's throats again, in the pursuit of the Battle for Azeroth, we stop. We seek out allies. We journey to Kulturas as the Alliance and to Zandalar and the Horde. On Zandalar, the Horde has to deal with internal politics as well as G'huun. Why are they doing this? Well, because they want to get rid of G'huun, get the Zandalari, and use them to bolster up their fleet. As for the Alliance, well, they head to Kulturas, they deal with internal politics, and they deal with the influence of N'Zoth, which is more directly felt through his servant Azshara and her Naga. Why? Well, to get their fleet. The first raid boss of this expansion is killing G'huun, and killing G'huun, of course, goes a long way to helping out the Zandalari trolls and allows them to properly commit themselves to Sylvanas' horde. When you look at the questing in Zandalar and the story, G'huun is absolutely the primary threat across the whole thing, a primary threat that we quickly solve. Now, the second raid is dealing with Azshara, and while we always knew that Azshara would be a boss in this expansion, she was recently described as the Gul'dan of this expansion, and that means that we would likely see her in the raid after G'huun. This means that the primary threat of both Zandalar and Kulturas is dealt with in the 8.0 and 8.1 patch cycle. And then further to this, we know that both the Mag'har Orcs and the Dark Iron Dwarves are recruited to join us in the Battle for Azeroth during the initial war campaign, which is available upon the launch of the expansion. So what's the core takeaway of this? Well, for me, the initial stages of this expansion are not dealing with the Battle for Azeroth at all. They're the prelude to the actual Battle for Azeroth. They're primarily driven by the Alliance and the Horde gathering groups of allies to their side. So what about the actual Battle for Azeroth that will happen? Well, there's two of them. The first one is our factions. The second one is the battle for the Titan Azeroth, who we have recently been charged with defending. With the Legion being dead, of course, we're defending her from the Void, and this second battle is likely being spearheaded by the new Champions of Azeroth faction. The first battle for Azeroth I'm going to cover is the one for Azeroth herself, and rather than start with Azshara, I'm actually going to start with Xavius. You see, Xavius was Azshara's High Counselor during the War of the Ancients. Malfurion turned Xavius into a tree, and then Xavius sank during the Sundering, along with Azshara and her Nightborn. N'Zoth then made a bargain with both Azshara and Xavius, and while we have not heard much from Azshara, we do know that she is a fast ally of N'Zoth from Chronicle, even to the point where her subordinates, such as Lady Vashj, were always truly in her service and not that of Illidan. She presumably has been gathering her strength in the underwater Naga capital of Nazjatar, and then as for Xavius, well, I have covered his exploits recently. The long and the short of it, and this is major, is that after the Emerald Nightmare, we introduced a remnant of the Void into the very heart of the Emerald Dream. This is compounded on how we know that the Emerald Nightmare is connected to both the Twisting Nether and the Great Dark through the Rift of Uln, therefore giving N'Zoth access to both. Now, do you know what's also floating around space, i.e. the Great Dark? All of that Void corruption that we fight alongside Ilaria on Argus in patch 7.3 of Legion. So while Xavius might be completely dead, we can be pretty damn sure that N'Zoth's purpose for him was indeed achieved. And we can also assume that he's not going to use Azshara purely as a blunt instrument. Although even as a blunt instrument, she's damn powerful. During the War of the Ancients, Manaroth thought to challenge her, but then he kind of realized, oh, she'd kick my ass, and then he didn't. And we can only assume that Azshara has gained significantly in power since then. But since we do know that she's a raid boss, we know we're going to be able to defeat her. And since Blizzard likes to have one piece of content lead onto the next, I think we can assume that her death will set up some sort of threat, or that some sort of side objective of N'Zoth will be achieved in the process. With both of perhaps his most powerful pawns defeated, N'Zoth has got to kick off his endgame plan. This all has to be leading towards something, so what will he do? Well, the most clear threat is this remnant of Void that is just in the Emerald Nightmare right now. Perhaps he could use that to access the Rift of Uln and then cause some sort of tremendous crisis. Perhaps he could be letting Void Ethereals in. Maybe it could be something far worse, something we have not seen, some sort of new type of threat. Alternatively, there are some hints going on that there's maybe something up with the Shadowlands. I know Pyromancer's really interested in that, although Blizzard could just go in any direction here. N'Zoth could, of course, finally reveal himself as a raid boss, but we've got to assume that all of his schemes are going to pay off. After all, things going badly for Azeroth equals raid content for players, right? And Blizzard, they need raid content, they need stories to tell, so stuff has got to go south. No matter how we get there, we can almost be assured that a large section of this expansion is going to be focused on the battle for Azeroth herself. But let's talk about the faction war. Blizzard have not rejected the idea of faction war-based raid content. They, of course, have to be careful with its implementation, but as an example, having mirrored boss mechanics with different NPCs and names, that would work out quite well. There are, cases where there's some characters like, say, Sarfang or Jaina, where I think each side would fight them and defeat them, but would probably take them prisoner rather than kill them. From what I understand of Blizzard's intent, the whole war is supposed to be grey, with both factions having valid reasons to hate each other. They say it's not just Sylvanas going in a bender and burning down Teldrassil, so we'll take them at their word for that, at least until we see the story itself and go through the novel and all of that stuff. So basically the point here is that we know G'huun is the first raid. We know that Azshara is the second raid, though not exactly where she'll be, whether she'll bring world content with her or anything like that. It's kind of hard to speculate because Suramar was so tightly integrated with Legion that I can't really draw a parallel, but once those two are finished, both Kulturas and Zandalar have, for the most part, been dealt with. And with that done, and the Dark Irons and the Maghars brought in, that really opens us up for the actual battles for Azeroth. And the order of these battles is very important. The most logical option seems to be that the third raid is the faction war, and that the final raid, the equivalent of Antorus, is N'Zoth springing his trap, having just exploited the fact that we have wasted our energy on each other. This would have the end of this expansion being a heavily Old God-focused affair, and the middle of the expansion being much more focused on the faction war. That said, if Blizzard wanted to keep Alliance versus Horde being the core of this expansion, then they could do it in, this way. They could have the main overt N'Zoth plan be the raid tier after Azshara. Perhaps we defeat his body or foil some major plan. Then we return to attacking each other, and the expansion could end with a major Alliance versus Horde event, only for the next expansion to be wholly Void focused, perhaps cashing in the various prophecies, the Remnant of the Void, and all of that stuff. So I think that is two very likely visions for Battle for Azeroth and what direction it will go in. Whatever order that all this stuff happens in, there's one thing we can be sure of. It's going to cause a chain of events that will lead into the next expansion. And with Azshara being defeated, we are running out of traditional villains to carve our way through. Really, with Azshara gone, that's all the RTS villains, and the Horde fighting the Alliance, they can only really cash that in once in a raid tier in my view, which means they've got to deal with the things that they've established, which is the various different prophecies, the Remnant of the Void, the Ethereals that we saw in patch 7.3. So I'm pretty sure that's the direction of the expansion after Battle for Azeroth, and that Battle for Azeroth itself is pretty much going to be some sort of Alliance versus Horde thing, and then something to do with N'Zoth basically springing a trap on us. So there you go, that is my thoughts for the boss progression of Battle for Azeroth and how it could lead into the future. A tremendous thank you to you for watching this video and everyone over on Patreon for supporting the channel. Without their help, this whole thing would be a hell of a lot harder, so it really, really is amazing. But thank you for watching this video, and I will see you next time.